FNAF news.
After months and months of waiting for any news about the Security Breach DLC, Steelwool has finally released a teaser, and boy do I have some thoughts on it. Like, who is this child? What's up with Chica and the rest of the Pizzaplex? Why the heck is Gregory back, and is this confirmation of Gregbot? I've got a lot of ideas about what's going on here and various things I'd like to see, but after stewing over this teaser at summer camp all week, I actually think I have a solid idea of what the story might be. So grab your flashlight and chuck it at that subscribe button, because if I'm right, this DLC could turn out to be very interesting. So the DLC is clearly going to be a sequel, what with the whole title of Ruin and the Pizzaplex being in shambles and whatnot, and I think this is pretty clear confirmation that the Burntrap ending is the true canon ending. There are only a couple endings where the Pizzaplex is in bad enough condition that it would be abandoned and left to rot, and given that Chica's looking a little bit melted, I'd say that this has to take place after at least one of the fire endings. And since there are only 2 fire endings, and one of them has Freddy and Vanny fall off the building and die, which no one wants to be the canon ending, and the other has a final boss fight and a fancy animated cutscene, this leaves the DLC to most likely fall into the Burntrap ending timeline, which I am perfectly happy with. This works well not just because the fire below the building and the resulting collapse of the pizzeria simulator location would be able to cause enough structural damage that the Pizzaplex would start to fall apart and be shut down, but also because this leaves the story in probably the most interesting place it can be picked up in the events of the DLC. Burntrap's been grabbed by the blob, but from there we don't know what's happened to him, and Glitchtrap is still around, so William Afton will still be able to make his appearance in some capacity. And since Princess Quest 3 hasn't been beaten, Vanny is still brainwashed and could actually be relevant to the story. Please, Steelwool, let her be relevant to the story. Speaking of story, it looks as though we're going to be playing as a brand new character in this DLC, which is pretty cool. Though for all we know, she isn't a new character and she's actually a robot kid possessed by Charlie or something, since Charlie isn't accounted for in the blob. I don't know. It would fall pretty in line with Security Breach's track record so far. But as far as we know, she is a new character, which makes me wonder, why the heck is she here? Given the fact that the place is, in ruins, it seems unlikely that she would be here voluntarily or without a solid reason. So unless this kid is taking dares or just obliviously wandered in, there are only a few reasons I can think of for her to be here. Option 1, she was kidnapped by Vanny or someone else, I don't know, and managed to escape after arriving in the Pizzaplex. While it could work, I don't see how Vanny or whoever the kidnapper is would lose track of her unless they intentionally left her alone with a way to escape. Maybe Vanessa has something to do with helping the kid get away or something. But then there's the issue of getting the girl to the Pizzaplex in the first place, which I think would be more difficult with the place shut down since families wouldn't be, actively coming to the Pizzaplex and whatnot. Option 2, she's investigating the missing kids/local residents, since it doesn't really specify kids in the newspaper, that were mentioned in the main game. We know Gregory is aware of the disappearances from his comment to Freddy before being given the option to leave the Pizzaplex, and that he thinks that him being present will do something to help stop said disappearances. It's possible that this girl also knows about the disappearances and might be there for some reason relating to them. With how little we hear about the missing kids or missing people from the main game, I'm really hoping we get more information on what's going on with them. So I think some reason relating to the disappearances would be pretty cool, and would be probably the best option story-wise for the DLC to go with, since kids going missing is a pretty central feature of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, and we haven't got nearly enough information on them from Security Breach compared to the weight that the disappearances were given at the ending of the game. The thing with this option is that somehow this girl would need to find out about the disappearances and have a reason to connect them to the Pizzaplex, so that she'd end up going there in the first place. Since Gregory seems to be one of the missing kids or a recreation/replacement of one of them, which I go into more depth about in my theory video on Patient 46 and how Fazbear Entertainment is now using either brainwashed or rebuilt or otherwise replaced kids to do their dirty work without drawing suspicion, he has a reason to be aware of the disappearances and their connection to the Pizzaplex. This girl, however, might not unless she was in a similar position, which brings me to option 2.5. Rather than getting kidnapped by Vanny and taken to the Pizzaplex after the events of Security Breach, she may have been in the Pizzaplex since before the events of Security Breach, or is also a replacement of a missing kid who was made in the Pizzaplex but only woke up after everything went to crap. Not to mention, we know robot kids are an actual thing with Lally's game, one of the books that's going to be coming out this summer. And if you look closely at the cover of the book and the image of the girl in the teaser, the base of what looks like the girl's leggings are bunched up just like the fabric around the robot kid's joints. And her hands are the same color of her jacket, as though she's wearing gloves that could hide the joints of mechanical fingers. Maybe Lally's game doesn't have to do with Gregory, but is connected to this girl. At this point, I don't trust any FNAF character to be an actual human being, honestly. Like, Gregory might be a robot and/or a clone. Vanessa might be a robot and/or a clone. Every other human ends up dead and/or an animatronic. While I don't want every character to be a robot in this franchise, at this point we can't discount the possibility, and honestly, I do think this specific instance would be pretty cool, so I'm throwing that out there. So that's my thoughts on the girl, but what about Gregory? Last we saw of him, he escaped the Pizzaplex, but based based on these monitors, it doesn't seem like he stayed away for long. It's possible that this is just old footage from the main events of Security Breach, but honestly that's kinda lame and wouldn't make much sense to include in the teaser unless it was directly relevant somehow. So I think it's safe to assume that Gregory came back to the Pizzaplex, and based on the help me message, something seems to have gone wrong. Something interesting though is that Gregory doesn't seem to be scared in any of these screens. Granted, in 2 of them we can't see his face, but in this image he seems more alert than scared, and in the others he seems to have a more serious or more determined expression. So if this is Gregory asking for help, he doesn't seem to be in immediate danger, and probably isn't asking for help in regards to being about to die or anything. It could also be someone else asking for help as well. Maybe this is Vanessa's way of asking Gregory for help, though that seems unlikely to me. It could also be a case of Vanny or Glitchtrap trying to lure in the girl by tricking her into thinking Gregory is asking for help, which could be some evidence that the two know each other, but I don't know. But what I do know is that Gregory wanted to stop the disappearances at the Pizzaplex, so he's probably back at the Pizzaplex for that purpose. With how he had to run away from Burntrap and leave Vanny behind still brainwashed and able to get up to stuff, if Gregory really wants to stop the disappearances, it does make sense that he would go back to continue investigating. And based on the images in the trailer, it looks as though he found something important. If you look closely at these images, the most noticeable details other than Gregory are the stars on the wall and the ceiling lights that I thought were eyes for a solid while, but if you zoom in a bit more to the bottom left corner, there are 3 indistinct shapes. This part of the room is completely in shadow other than these things, so I highly doubt they're meant to be part of the wall, and they're probably closer to the camera or the light source of the image. And the complete lack of detail makes me think that something is being purposefully obscured. I don't know about you, but to me, these look like they could be papers or something else that Gregory's holding. On top of that, with the blurry images, it's relatively easy to tell that this is Gregory's hand holding his flashlight, but if you look at the bottom of the frame, there's a large, indistinct rectangle. And since that is not a way that knees can bend, and it is too big and the wrong shape to be his hand, the Fazcam, or the Phaser Blaster, I think he's carrying a briefcase or something similar that probably has some important documents or pieces of technology that would expose what's going on. Who knows, maybe he even got his hands on the Glitchtrap circuit boards that were scanned in VR and AR or something. Or maybe he's just looking for a way to charge Freddy. That's less interesting to me, but it's possible. Anyway, whatever Gregory was looking for, I think he found something. But for whatever reason, he wasn't able to leave the Pizzaplex with the stuff. My guess is that before he was able to escape, Vanny managed to capture him and take whatever it is he managed to grab, and Freddy, who he's likely talking to on his Faz watch in this screen, wasn't able to save him. From here, he either escaped and sent the message asking for help, or he didn't escape, and Vanny sent the message asking for help as a lure to the character we play as. Or, and this is the one I like the most solely for it would be cool, but also it makes some sense, and that is that Gregory has had his consciousness uploaded into the computer via Glitchtrap in some capacity, potentially made easier depending on whether or not the kid is already a robot to begin with, but I digress. The thing is, it isn't impossible. Glitchtrap's whole deal is getting in people's heads and doing stuff, and he already did a consciousness transfer with Vanny, so why not a full transfer in the other direction that leaves Gregory in the computer system of the broken down Pizzaplex, unable to leave and get the information out, making it so that Gregory has to resort to communicating through the computers and controlling various parts of the Pizzaplex's technology. In this scenario, or just in general for the DLC really, I think Gregory will be the guide character of the game, especially since I highly doubt they'd have it be Freddy again. And as neat as the idea of Chica being the guide is, logically speaking, she's probably still hostile and not in much condition to guide anyone. By this point, Gregory would know his way around the Pizzaplex, so he would be able to give directions and advice, talking to the protagonist through the screens and probably a Faz watch of some kind as he guides her through the Pizzaplex. However, if Gregory's mind is in the computer, this leaves Gregory's body unoccupied. And since Burntrap isn't exactly in great shape, I feel like William Afton, or Glitchtrap, may be looking for a new vessel. And if Gregory has already been helping the protagonist, and if he hasn't told her that he's not in his body, I think she may be quick to trust someone with his face. While I do have some other speculations for the game, those are my main ideas based on just this teaser. If you liked any of them, feel free to subscribe, because you can expect more like them. And if you want me to expand on anything or want a separate video explaining any of the ideas, let me know in the comments. Don't get stabbed and have a nice day.